Can your SAP handle the entire return to duty process? I recently got this question in a YouTube comment, so I thought that I would discuss that because this problem creates a lot of confusion with drivers. So today's video, I'm going to explain exactly what the SAP does and what we don't do and who is responsible for the rest of the process. And if we haven't met, my name's Cindy Athey. I'm a DOT-Qualified SAP, and I help drivers and other safety sensitive employees navigate the SAP return to duty process every day after a DOT violation. And if you're new to the SAP process or you're trying to figure out who's responsible for what, this video will help clear some things up, or I hope so. So let's start with the basics. A SAP is a substance abuse professional. It's a DOT qualified evaluator who works within that DOT return to duty process after a safety sensitive employee has a drug or alcohol violation. So the SAP's job is to assess the employee, make recommendations, and monitor their compliance, and then have a follow-up meeting and assessment with them after they've completed the recommendations to ensure that they're really eligible and ready to return to safety sensitive duty. So the SAP is not an employer, not a drug testing lab, not the medical review officer with regards to drug testing, and the SAP is not responsible for every step of the return to duty process. The SAP has a specific role, and DOT regulations clearly kind of define that role. The first step is the initial evaluation. During that appointment, we'll discuss the circumstances surrounding the violation, any relevant substance abuse history, and gather information that helps determine whether a recommendation of education or treatment is appropriate. DOT mandates the SAP has to recommend a minimum of substance abuse education up through treatment for a person. And that can mean many different things. So treatment could mean individual counseling, intensive outpatient group therapy, 12-step meetings, or actually a residential program. It really depends on the case because each case is different and each person would need a different level of care, right? So some individuals will be recommended for education and others may be recommended for treatment. The recommendation depends on the specific facts and circumstances of each case. So after the initial evaluation, the employee completes the education or treatment. And a lot of times I get a question like, how long does that take? It really is up to you because I know as a SAP, I'm ready for the follow-up. When the employee is ready for the follow-up, I leave time in my schedule to get them scheduled quickly for the follow-up because I know that's holding up like getting back to duty. So I understand and I appreciate their effort to get the recommendations done quickly. Now, if someone's going to residential treatment, let's be real, it's going to take a little bit, right? But an educational program or course, that can be completed really quick, right? If the person shows effort and gets it done. The goal is not simply to check a box. The goal is to address the issue that brought the person to the SAP in the first place and reduce the likelihood of future violations. And once the employee completes the recommendations, they return to their SAP for a follow-up assessment. And during this appointment, the SAP reviews documentation, discusses progress, and determines whether the employee has successfully complied with the recommendation. If they have, the SAP can determine that they've successfully completed that portion of the SAP process and create the return to duty eligibility paperwork with follow-up testing plan. And let's say they've not. If they haven't completed the recommendations or not to the satisfaction of the SAP, right, additional recommendations may be necessary and the employee would have to go complete those and then report back to the SAP. After completing the follow-up meeting with the SAP will create the return to duty eligibility paperwork with follow-up testing plan. Now, DOT has certain regulations that the SAP must follow. The follow-up testing plan must be between 1 and 5 years with a minimum of 6 follow-up tests in the first year back to safety sensitive duty. So the SAP can increase the number of follow-up tests if they feel the need, based on their discretion. So they determine the testing plan based on the DOT regulations and each individual circumstances of the case. What the SAP does not do, they don't hire drivers, they don't find drivers' jobs, they don't conduct return to duty tests, They don't collect testing specimens. The SAP does not work for DOT or a lab. They don't verify drug test results. That's the MRO or the medical review officer's job. And the SAP does not perform the employer's responsibilities with regards to the return to duty process. So who handles the return to duty test? Now this is where I get a lot of questions, so it can go one or two ways. If you have an employer, the SAP will send the follow-up paperwork with testing plan to the employer after you sign a release of information form for that employer, right? And then the employer will send you for your return to duty test. If you don't have an employer, you can hire a third-party administrator called a consortium, and they can manage step 5 for you. So you would hire them, they'll need the SAP's paperwork, so you'll reach out to your SAP will have you sign a release information form for the consortium, and then send the consortium the follow-up paperwork with testing plan so that they can order that test for you. When the negative test result comes back, because remember, the return to duty test must be negative, when that comes back, they'll enter it into the clearinghouse, you'll see step 5 checked off, and then that tells you that you're not in prohibited status anymore. But the new thing is you will then need to check with your local DMV to make sure your CDL, if it's been downgraded, gets reinstated, which means a lot of times you have to pay a reinstatement fee. They'll turn it back on, then you can drive, right, during your follow-up testing plan. That's another confusion for drivers. A lot of drivers feel that they cannot drive if their follow-up testing plan is not completed. No, you can drive after DMV and step 5, and DMV gives you the okay. Understanding who's responsible for each step can save you a lot of frustration, let me tell you. If you expect the SAP to perform functions that belong to the employer or the consortium or the MRO, you're probably going to end up confused about what happens next. The SAP plays an important role, but the SAP is only one part of the overall return to duty process. So I hope this video helped clear up some of the confusion surrounding the SAP's role. If it did, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I post videos regularly answering real drivers' questions who are going through this SAP process. And if you have a question you'd like me to cover in a future video, leave it in the comments below. Many of the videos come directly from questions that you ask. And one more thing, if you've enjoyed this kind of information but don't always have time to sit and watch a video, I recently launched the SAP Lady Podcast over on Spotify. So if you'd rather just listen, check out the link in the description box. And if you're looking for additional resources, I also have the link to my Linktree, which has a lot of free things over there, like the free SAP-friendly trucking company list that I've compiled. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll be back real soon.